debate. They're doing a public service in doing so, and I think that's appreciated by all of us. I've got a couple of housekeeping chores to cover with you, and then we will proceed. First of all, I would ask you to do what they do in every movie theater, even though we're not in one, and that's to kindly switch off your cell phones. And if you need to use it, we recommend that you probably go outside and take a conversation there if you have to do that. There are going to be many important issues that we're covering tonight. Hopefully we'll get through all of them. You need to know that I did not prepare any of these questions. They were prepared by the committee. And I am here purely in a neutral capacity and only to oversee the proceedings, make sure none of you get into fist fights. We don't want a lot of rowdiness, boisterousness, or discourtesy to either of the speakers. It's appropriate that they get your attention, and I hope you'll be respectful of that fact as the debate proceeds. Also, obviously, as a courtesy to those in the audience with you. Given the shortness of time, I'm going to go over the rules in a second, but given the shortness of time, we're not going to be entertaining questions from the audience, but we're hopeful that you will be hearing in the issues discussed everything that you want to know about it. And obviously, in the time allotted, I'm sure the candidates will do their very best to cover that material. So before I introduce the candidates, let me simply go over the ground rules, which are as follows. Each will be given an opportunity to make an opening statement of 2 minutes. They will then have 2 minutes each to answer the questions, which I will pose, and each will have time for a 30-second rebuttal. I will alternate up and back between them in the questioning. We think there's time, and hope there is time, for approximately 7 questions. At the conclusion of that segment, I will ask each candidate to give a closing statement, which will take 2 minutes, and we'll do that in the opposite order from the way in which they gave the opening statements. And at that point, we will adjourn. Are there any questions that I can answer at this point? Otherwise, we will proceed. So, to my right and your left, I believe you see Supervisor Adams, Susan Adams, and next to her, Damon Connolly. And with that, I'm going to disappear behind that desk there and start to ask these questions. Are we ready?
Ready.
Yes, ma'am. Supervisor Adams, we'll begin with you. Would you like to please give us an opening statement?
Thank you. Well, first I'd like to thank the Democrats for providing an opportunity for us to make our presentations here before you tonight. I've been looking forward to this one for a while, and I've always appreciated the support and the endorsements I've received from the Democratic Central Committee and all of my other races for County Supervisor. I believe that you have recognized my hard work and my ability to bring the Democratic issues from vision to reality at the county, and the important issues such as good environmental stewardship, good relationships with labor, social justice, and equity for all of our people, and health care for all. None of us in elected office are able to do these things alone. We can't bring these projects to closure without involvement and engagement with our community, including our businesses, our nonprofit partners, our public employees, all of those who help make Marin Marin. As a professor of nursing and a women's health nurse practitioner, I bring a unique perspective to the Board of Supervisors. My approach when I was first elected is healthy people, healthy communities, and healthy planet. And 40% of our county budget is directed to health and human services. So the county is implementing currently the most seminal piece of healthcare reform legislation since Medicare, and so my lens has been valuable. As a resident of the Marinwood community for more than 25 years, I've raised my children there as a single parent, taught a Dominican, and supported our excellent school system, and I remain committed to the community that I love. I'm proud of what I have accomplished, including brokering a deal with the San Rafael Rock Quarry in the community, building a health and wellness campus that allows everyone access for healthcare so nobody has to go bankrupt, and many others. We have challenges ahead, but we can do it together, and I'm not done yet, and I hope for your support. Thank you.
Thank you, Susan. Damon.
Thank you, Richard. Good evening, everyone. I also want to thank the Marin Democratic Party for hosting us and also for your past support of all my races. My name is Damon Connolly. I'm currently the Vice Mayor of San Rafael. In my second term on the City Council, I also had the honor of serving as the Dixie School Board President. My wife and I have lived in the community with our 2 daughters for 18 years. And I will say I'm a proud, active Democrat. I bring that up because I realize that my position is not partisan. I take that very seriously. But it's the values I share with you as a Democrat that really inform my decision-making at the local level. Strong public education system, clean and healthy environment, equality of opportunity, including access to good-paying jobs. I've put those values into action. I've been willing to take on the big fights during my tenure. I voted no on the Target store, and I actually led the opposition based on the impact on our local small businesses, as well as wages and benefits in town. I'm the chair of the Marin Clean Energy Program. I was also one of the founding board members. It is a groundbreaking environmental program that's not only taken root in our county, but is a statewide leader, and I'm continuing to lead that fight. I'm running because we need a fresh perspective in local county government. What I've heard from the community is we need a change. Business as usual is not working. We need a supervisor who listens, puts the needs of residents first, and provides effective leadership. The old days of simply electing officials who then go off and make decisions with little community input is over. Our residents are more engaged than ever. We need representatives that are as well. I look forward to sharing my vision for Marin, how I'll be more responsive, and ask for your support.
Thank you, David. So the first question, and I will direct it to Susan to answer first. For the past several years, the Board of Supervisors has used public money to provide community service grants to groups, usually nonprofits, in need of financial assistance. Recently, the Supervisors' grant funding has come under public criticism and has been labeled by some as a slush fund. How do you see the grant fund, and would you continue this practice if you prevail in the June election?
Thank you for that question. So the issue around community service grants is something that's been around for a long time. Back when Supervisor Giacomini was serving, there was quite a bit more money that was allocated for each district to provide support for things that were important for those districts, whether it was road improvements or support for schools. Over the years, that pot of money became smaller. The community service grants went for things like after-school programs for Boys and Girls Club, computers in our Miller Creek school system. For me, a big bulk of the resources that I accumulated over time actually went into doing a levee study for the Santa Benicia community, because that community is facing flooding. So these are all programs that help the community. Because there was some concern reported by the civil grand jury, the funds have changed, and so now people can apply for a community small service grant through the county administrator's office. It doesn't go through the Board of Supervisors any longer. Grants are made online. Anybody can apply. The administrator reviews those in terms of what our key legislative initiatives are, and then a presentation is made to the Board of Supervisors in public open hearing for the public to weigh in, and for the Board of Supervisors to make a decision about where those grants are allocated. The people that have been receiving these grants, whether it's our veterans, programs for homelessness, children's programs, have all appreciated the ability to have these small grants, one-time grants that help them do really important projects in collaboration with us.
Thank you, Damon.
So is this a rebuttal, or am I 2 minute response?
This is your rebuttal, and then we can alternate, am I correct?
Or this is my 2 minute? Okay, 2 minutes. I am opposed
No,
to
you have 30 seconds.
30, okay.
30 seconds.
No, that was kind of a clarification.
And then the next question will go to you, you'll have 2 minutes, and then Supervisor will have 30 seconds to respond. So this is your,
Okay, got it. I'll make it quick then. I am opposed to the supervisor's discretionary funds. First of all, just so we're clear, the funds are still directed through the supervisors, and I think that creates a risk of the appearance of political patronage. What I would like to see is for the any worthwhile programs, and there are many that are proposed through this, go through the ordinary budget process. So there's full transparency. Okay.
thank you. David, the next question is going to go to you, and you'll have 2 minutes to respond. What improvements or changes would you suggest to strengthen the current Marin County employee pension system? Or do you think the current retirement system should be scrapped and a new retirement system be considered? If so, what type of retirement program? Yes, ma'am.
He gets
Mr.
the
Freitas?
same question goes to
Damon.
Damon.
And has,
And then Susan.
He gets 30 seconds.
oh, you're doing it, he gets the same question. Okay, unclear, I should have read this better. All right, thank you, we'll correct it. So, we'll have to repeat this. You have the same question being asked, he's answering the first question.
Right.
You have another 1.5 minutes to answer the first question. You already answered.
You get 2 minutes to answer. Sorry, we'll just.
Okay,
Yeah.
that's fine with me.
Yeah.
We're making the rules as we go.
We're a flexible bunch. So,
Back
yeah,
talking about community service grants.
yes, so I'm opposed to the supervisor's discretionary fund, the so-called slush fund, even in its amended form. I think it is important to emphasize that the supervisors still have discretion to direct the funds. The ultimate decision is made by the county administrator, but groups certainly know where the funding came from, and therein lies the issue. I will say that many of the applicants are worthwhile community programs, nonprofits. My concern, though, is it creates a situation of political patronage. What I'd rather see in a transparent way is that we do it through the ordinary budget process. If the program warrants support, let's have a full hearing on it, gather the coalition you need as a supervisor to make the case as a community that we need the program, and then convince your colleagues, and that way you avoid any appearance issues. I will note that over the last couple of years, particularly before the reforms, so to speak, were implemented, the supervisors did go on a spending spree, including Supervisor Adams, to the tune of $105,000 in 2014, and I also believe another 6 figures before that. I just don't think that's the way we need to be doing business. Let's bring sunlight to the process. Let's do it through the ordinary budget process, and that's how I would proceed with that.
Susan, your rebuttal.
Well, the rebuttal is that the supervisors make decisions on all of the issues, and an annual one-time allocation doesn't address the emergency things that come up on occasion in the community. For example, computers that fell apart in Miller Creek School and they needed some support, or the flood zone project that I was working on in Santa Benicia. They didn't have enough funds and there was an important timeline available. Planned Parenthood needed some funds to restart, and Planned Parenthood is a very important service in our community.
Thank you. We're going to proceed to the next question. Damon, this goes to you first, and you have 2 minutes. What improvements or changes would you suggest to strengthen the current Marin County employee pension system? Or do you think the current retirement system should be scrapped and a new system considered? If so, what type of retirement program would you suggest?
We need to strengthen the system and reform it. My timing was impeccable in starting with the city council, and then the Great Recession hit literally 1 month after I took office. My whole tenure on the council has been to deal with budget issues, making tough decisions, and pension reform. San Rafael has been a leader in pension reform. We were early in adopting the governor's 12-point plan, including some initiatives of our own. The goal is to make it sustainable over the long term, and I very much appreciate what our public employees do for us, both at the city and the county. There's 3 issues. One is the unfunded liability for the pension system. The second is unfunded liability for the healthcare retirement system, and the third is whether or not to use debt to fund the system. The county is weak on 2 of those issues. Right now, San Rafael is rated #1 of 40 jurisdictions in the county on retiree health care reform, steps we've taken to address the system. The county is way down the line. The county currently relies on $104 million in pension obligation bonds to so-called decrease its unfunded liability. We need to do it without debt. Right now, the city has done the reform where year over year, we rely on no reserves or no debt to fund our annual pension obligations. There's more we need to do, but it's that kind of reform that will be crucial in going forward.
Thank you. Susan?
Well, it's not true that San Rafael didn't use debt. San Rafael has a $5 million pension obligation bond to help lower their pension debt. And the only portion that is better than the county in terms of retiree health care, not pensions, is in the health care. And that's because a few years ago, the counties were paying their health benefits with the retirees and the employees all in one lump sum. So right now, there's new laws that make us have to separate. Okay.
Thank you. Rebuttal?
Yes.
No.
No, now I get my 2 minutes and then he rebuts.
Get your 2 minutes.
Are you ready?
We gotta get this down before this is over.
So in the pension discussion, oftentimes it's forgotten that we just came through the worst recession ever experienced in most of our lives, and the market crash was part of what lost us these funds. Also lost in the discussion is the fact that a lot of these pensions were agreed to decades ago before either Damon or I were representing our offices. Our county has been very aggressive in dealing with the pension issues, and as a result, we've received AAA, Fitch, and Moody ratings for how aggressive we've been. The bulk of county pensions, which are housed in the retirement system, are 78% funded. 80% is considered healthy. The bulk of San Rafael's pensions housed in the retirement system is 62% funded. The county recently paid down the corpus of the pensions by $20 million, added a stricter 4th tier of pensions where employees are paying more into their pensions, not spiking, 3-year averaging, and retiring with 2% of their average salary after 61.5. The market is returning in double digits, and as a result, the county going forward has saved $98 million. This is what has helped contribute to our credit rating. San Rafael's credit rating was downgraded. The county took out an obligation bond as a way to pay back the debt. There's 19 years left to pay on that, but even with that bond, we have a very low pension, we have a very low debt, we have a very healthy reserve. Another reason why we experienced a great bond rating. Up until a few years ago, as I was talking about earlier, the gas fee rules changed, and so this year the county put $30 million into creating the separate healthcare fund, and we're very aggressively paying that down. So all in all, it's not clear what the Affordable Care Act will do as that goes forward, and we're analyzing that now, but because of our aggressive addressing of this issue, we are one of only 2 counties in the whole state of California that has the kind of credit rating that we have.
Thank you. David?
It's misleading to say San Rafael's bond rating was downgraded. On January 31, 2014, S&P actually upgraded our bond rating. The way Marin County gets to the 78% funding level is by using pension obligation bonds. It's important to look at all three elements. If you do that, Marin County's at 61%, Santa Fe's at 61.21%.
Thank you. Next question will be directed first to Susan. Is there a lack of affordable housing in Marin County? And if so, what solutions would you propose to address the need to increase this type of housing? And do you support or oppose ABAG's plan for the area? And please explain your answer.
Well, the polls that the county has conducted and that I've conducted show that a significant majority of our community believe that we do lack affordable housing for our workforce. Our business community cites the lack of affordable housing as a deterrent to attracting quality businesses. Our public agencies and nonprofits are having problems finding a workforce that will endure the long commutes. Affordable housing in Marin means a family of four, a low-income family in Marin County earns $65,000 a year. And if we think of who those people are, they are in-home support service workers who earn $12.10 an hour, starting Dixie school teachers that make less than $43,000 a year, child care workers and preschool teachers that make less than $30,000 a year, a deli worker at the Marinwood Market, $10 an hour, lab techs, nurses' aides, clerical workers, and the guy that makes my latte in the morning. These are the people who are part of the fabric of our community, and the challenge is that while the majority want affordable housing, that most people don't want it in their neighborhoods. I've worked very closely with my Marinwood community over the last 8 years to take a derelict strip mall where there's been drug deals, vandalism, and graffiti, bring a new grocery store in, a farmer's market, and there's now a proposal on the table that we're going to go through a process to determine whether or not we're going to get some family units redeveloped in that area. Two market rate developers already couldn't make it pencil out with what the community wanted to have happen. They couldn't make it pencil out. And so I was heartened of a scoping meeting that we had last Saturday when a majority of the people that spoke said they supported a redevelopment. They had questions and concerns and they raised those that'll be studied, but we're going to go through the process to determine what's appropriate there.
David.
Is it rebuttal or 2 minutes? I think we're getting this now.
What would you prefer?
2 minutes, but I'll keep it to 30. There's no question we need more affordable housing opportunities in Marin for people of all income ranges. As a father of 2 daughters, one who's in college, one who's about to go to college, the issue hits home for me. The issue is, how are we going to do it in Marin? What people have an issue with is that the only solution apparently being proposed, particularly in District 1, is high-density housing. We have other creative alternatives, including converting existing units into affordable, restoration, second units, inclusionary zoning.
Thank you. Okay, moving. Susan,
No, now he gets,
He gets his
his
chance.
question, and I
Get the two.
change the routine. Go on.
Okay, so which
Keep
question?
going.
We're going on to number 4.
No, number 3, now
he didn't take us forward.
I think you're confusing them by having them rebut them and coming back and giving an answer.
Do you guys want to hold your rebuttal until you both answered and then that was better? But for this one,
For this one,
I just want to see
2
you'll
minutes
answer
at
your
my
rebut and then we'll.
David.
I think the issue at the county level right now is what's the vision? As near as I can tell, and again, particularly in District 1, where 70% of the housing allocation in the current housing element is located, is the way that we're proceeding toward providing housing opportunities seems to be a one-size-fits-all, high-density, near the freeway approach. I think we can do better than that. I think Marin is unique because we value low-impact development, open space, strong public schools, and effective services. The Marinwood Plaza issue, there are legitimate concerns about. Absolutely something needs to be done at that center. It is a dilapidated center with a nice market that I live nearby as well. I see several issues with it though. The community, because it's a tax exempt proposal, is concerned about the fiscal impact on the schools. The community wants an emphasis on retail as a gathering place. Yes, we do need to look at housing as well, but the scale is an issue. And finally, there are environmental concerns at that site. It currently sits on a toxic plume, and also the high-density proposal is for right next to the freeway, which raises other issues. The IJ was right, an important step is being taken by having the EIR. I would have liked to have seen more consideration of community engagement leading up to this point. One issue I'm running on is I'm going to be out there listening. The way we handled our PDA debate in the Civic Center was town halls, minimal yelling. We got out there, we listened to people, we came up with a great station area plan, and we decided in that location, high density housing did not make sense for our community, so we rescinded the PDA. We were not convinced we were either going to gain or lose sufficient money.
Susan, 30 seconds for rebuttal.
So it's unfortunate that Damon wasn't an active participant during that 8-year process that we had with the community before this development proposal came forward. And I'd just like to point out that there are absolutely no multifamily units in the unincorporated area of San Rafael. However, if you travel up and down the 101 corridor in San Rafael, you will see many 3 to 5 story multi-unit developments, most recently the 4-story multi-unit, 88-unit apartment complex across from the Civic Center. That was the city of San Rafael.
Thank you. We'll move to the next question, and this will be addressed to Damon. First, Damon, what are your ideas to increase the use of green alternative energy in Marin County? Was the Board of Supervisors wrong when they recently denied on a 4-to-1 vote the establishment of a solar farm in the Black Point area outside Nevada? And please explain.
Sure. So I think the best way we can achieve our greenhouse gas reduction goals from a renewable energy standpoint is through our participation in Marin Clean Energy. As I mentioned, I've been a leader of that program and the chair of the program. We're offering participants a 50% renewable option as well as a 100% deep green renewable option. We are also now pushing energy efficiency programs. The City of San Rafael was awarded a statewide Beacon Award for sustainability, in large part because of our leadership on renewable energy issues, and I'm chair of the Sustainability Committee. For example, San Rafael is actually leading a 3-county effort called the Solar Seed Program to actually bring more renewable energy onto government buildings and parking structures. That's just one thing we're doing. Richard, I would have voted yes to allow that renewable project to go forward on Greenpoint. Again, I'm always mindful of getting all the perspectives. Perhaps easy for me with armchair quarterbacking, but I would have voted yes. That's hindsight now. Going forward, what we need to do, and I'm very glad to see Supervisor Kate Sears willing to also take the lead, as will I, on this issue, is figure out how we can look at incentivizing local renewable energy projects. In Marin County, we're not going to have a big wind farm, we're not going to have a big solar farm. We can have solar on rooftops. One idea that Marin Clean Energy is pushing is a feed-in tariff, 1 megawatt size or less. We'll buy it from you. The San Rafael Airport was the first of its kind of that. I think the county can really look at those small local projects.
Susan, this is your full answer. You'll each have a chance to rebut.
Okay. Well, it was a 3-2 vote, and I was one of the ones that supported the solar array. Supervisor Kinsey was the other one. And there were some concerns about environmental issues on open space land. So the county is now taking up the issue and working on creating an ordinance that will give more direction so it makes it easier for us to consider those options. And I just want to point out that Damon wouldn't be able to be the chair of the Marin Clean Energy if I hadn't been the deciding vote that launched that program and allocated $2 million We allocated $2 million for seed money to get it going. There were also 3 private donors that helped with that process. So I'm very proud of that very difficult vote I took. It created some challenges for me in my last election because PG&E wasn't very happy with me on that vote. So I was willing to take the heat on that. When I voted for it, the vision was that we would be collecting resources to actually make Marin more sustainable. And what I've seen is drift. We're expanding beyond our Marin County borders into Richmond. We're considering Napa. And we should be getting off of the shell grid, using those resources to actually install more of our solar on our public buildings, schools, and public facilities. But at the same time, the rates have just been reported that they're going up 7%, and we are still getting shell energy. And so, I hope that as this continues to move forward, that we redirect and refocus our energies to making Marin County sustainable and to have our county be off of the grid. And I would look forward to seeing Damon move in that direction.
Damon, 30 seconds.
We have a concrete plan to get off the Shell contract. That has been the plan all along, and to move toward local renewable energy. We established a 1 megawatt project at Centerville Airport. We have 1 megawatt that will be at the Buck Center. We are contracting for another megawatt locally. We're pushing local energy efficiency programs. And the partnership with Richmond has given us even more opportunity to do local and regional projects, including solar on rooftops.
Thank you. Susan, you have 30 seconds. Yeah, this is your rebuttal. We've changed the rebuttal.
The rebuttal. Well, certainly I think both Damon and I agree that being in clean energy, I actually took Damon up to Humboldt with me to make a presentation in front of the Humboldt Board of Supervisors because they were considering starting their own CCA. So I think the best approach that we have is to be an example for other communities that they can copy the work that we put together and have it be easier for them to launch their own CCAs. Because I think the more individual CCAs that we have, the more we are able to.
Thank you. Next question will be directed to you, Susan, first.
Okay.
Marin County is located, as we know, in earthquake country, and in the past has experienced catastrophic wildfires. Are you satisfied with the current disaster preparedness protocols that were established by the Marin County Office of Emergency Services and the Disaster and Citizens Corps Council? Are there any changes that you'll suggest or want to suggest to improve the county's disaster preparedness?
I am the chair of the County Disaster Council, and when we go into disaster mode, I'm the Director of Emergency Services. I brought our county through 3 emergencies over the course of my term in office. I'm very proud of the development of the Marin Medical Reserve Corps when I was first in office, and I said, if the buildings fall apart that are providing the emergency care, how do we respond? Where are my healthcare people? And we didn't have that in place. We sent out a letter to 1,200 licensed healthcare people in the community, had 800 responses. We now have 400 licensed healthcare volunteers who have received national recognition for their ability to respond, set up MASH tents, and be able to deal with an emergency. We are constantly reviewing our annexes. We've actually received a considerable amount of funds to help us with our local community disaster readiness. I've asked every year that we have a line item budget allocated in the county budget for community CERT programs and CERT radio so that communities who want to do self-preparedness have access to some resources to help them with that. And I'm very proud of the work we've accomplished. One of the big things that we are also going to have to deal with is sea level rise and what's going to happen with our lower level communities. Earthquake and fire with the drought that we've just had is going to continue to be a big issue. We had to maintain our volunteer fire force throughout the winter months that we've never had to include before. And so if we're not addressing climate change, it's all interrelated. We're going to see more and more of these types of disastrous climatic changes. And so I'm very proud of the work, being a nurse and having worked in emergency situations in a hospital environment. I think I'm the most well-suited to dealing with our disaster issues in the county.
Thank you. Damon, 2 minutes.
Thank you. Supervisor Adams predicted part of my answer, and that is a big issue for me in terms of disaster preparedness right now is the threat to our local communities of climate change and sea level rise. Right now, I believe the county needs to do a lot more given what the predictions are right now. A particular issue in my district, District 1, is flooding. Not only does the city of Santa Fe have a lot of coastline that could be subject to sea level rise, but the community of Santa Venetia, which is unincorporated, does as well. A top priority for them is the issue of levee protection and flooding. That issue has been inadequately addressed. In fact, the community recently had a study of its levee system. The study was inconclusive, except that it basically said we're ineligible for Army Corps help. That's an unacceptable outcome. We have to think about ways where we can bolster those levees. And part of it also is we're in a situation where flood insurance is becoming very unaffordable for those communities. Paul Jensen of our staff just prepared drafts of definitive white paper on sea level rise. It's part of the lead that Santa Fe is taking on sustainability issues. I think the county, although we have an environmental ethos, we get it, climate change is an issue. We can do way more. Santa Fe was the first community in Marin to have a climate change action plan. We've been implementing it for the last 6 to 7 years. In earnest, the county has been lagging behind. That's something I'd like to correct.
Thank you. Susan, your rebuttal.
Well, the vast majority of my Santa Venetia community are very pleased with the activities I've engaged them with. I went to Washington, D.C. We accessed some money to conduct those studies. We have a new pump station. We're finishing some hydrology work now to take a watershed approach to the flooding issues there. We have a new public works employee who's doing a FEMA flood rating so that we can lower insurances. And we're going to be working on taking a watershed approach and addressing these issues. So I think...
Thank you. David, your response?
Yeah, I just think, again, we should be the leader in the country. We're Marin County. And yes, we should be taking a watershed approach. Yes, we should be establishing horizontal levees, new ways of looking at this coming situation. So my proposition is I am willing to get in there and be an environmental leader for our community.
Thank you. The next question will go to you first, Damon. One of the purposes of the county's road and trails management plan is to lessen trail use conflicts. In the past few years, conflicts have increased, due mainly to increased mountain bike activity. Do you support the use of mountain bikes on downhill, single-track footpaths? And do you support the current 15-mile-per-hour speed limit for bike usage on open space trails and fire roads? And finally, it's a three-part question. Should equestrian and mountain bike activity be separated for safety reasons on multi-use trails and fire roads? And I can repeat any of those you need to have repeated.
Maybe part 2. 50 miles.
First one is, do you support the mountain bikes on downhill single-track footpaths?
And second.
Do you support the 15-mile-per-hour speed limit for bikes on the open space trails and fire roads? Thirdly, should equestrian and mountain bike activity be separated for safety reasons on multi-use trails and fire roads? We counted that as one question, but I'm not quite sure why.
Well, let me just start by saying I should mention to the audience, I'm also in the attorney and a professional mediator whose skills come in handy in the political realm in dealing with conflict and trying to bring people together. The Trails Management Plan is one of those situations where my philosophy is Marin, and particularly Mount Tam, is a beautiful natural environment. We want to allow people to have access to it for recreation, for enjoyment of nature, and health. I do believe that mountain bikes should have access to trails. Now, is that to every trail? My overarching concerns are safety and also environmental protection. But I think we have a strong mountain bike culture in Marin. I think the vast majority play by the rules. If they don't, that's an issue we should be dealing with. So I think speed limits are appropriate to protect safety. I do like the idea of looking at directional trails, trail separation, to minimize conflict, to increase safety on the trails. I think there is a solution where we can bring people together on this. We've seen some productive dialogue over time. This is one of those areas where I believe I have the skill set to bring people together. So yes, Richard, to answer your questions, I'm a mountain biker myself. I'm a hiker. I believe the two uses along with equestrian use can coexist. We need to have rules. They need to be followed. We need to protect the environment. And we need to come up with creative solutions that overcome conflict, like separation of trails and uses.
Thank you. Susan, you have 2 minutes.
Well, we have been bringing people together over the last couple of years. There's been very active engagement by our Director of Parks, Linda Dahl, for the horse, bike, and hiking people. When we originally purchased open space land, it was for preservation and protection, with some passive use for hiking and horses that had been traversing across those hills for probably about a century. With the advent of the mountain bikes coming online, it created a new user group, and there have been conflicts. And not all of the mountain bike users are operating within the law. They're chopping down trees, they're creating new trails, and they're not abiding by the rules of speed. Because of some of these conflicts, the county's taken a very proactive approach in working on creating a new bike park at Stafford Lake that will provide those kinds of thrills and spills that the thrill seekers are looking for. But we still have some challenges on the trails. And for me, the primary purpose of our open space was for habitat preservation with passive use. Secondary, with all the multi-users, we have safety comes next. And so when you have mountain bikes on the same single track trail with hikers, older people, and people with little kids or horses, we have interactions like we had not that long ago where 2 young mountain bikers caused a woman to be thrown off of her horse and seriously injured, and the horse injured as well. So what we're looking at now are things like separate trails. We're looking at widening multi-use trails so that they have a good user experience, but not exactly the same as a fire road. And the public conversations are continuing. So I would encourage anybody who's interested to go on the website and find out when those meetings are, and we'd love to hear from you.
Thank you. Damon, 30 seconds to respond.
Yes, so I believe that based on my initial response that we can overcome these issues, that there is a public dialogue that started, that needs to continue. Safety is paramount. I don't think we should penalize all mountain bikers just by the actions of some. We do need to have enforcement. I think we have a proactive community out there, and I think we can come up with creative solutions to this.
Susan, your vote?
The only thing I would like to say is that it was interesting that Damon didn't report his endorsement by Access for Bikes, and those, some of the members of that organization are some of the members that are not behaving so well on the trails. And so I would encourage, if he has connections with those individuals, that he work with them to put the safety first message out.
Thank you. We have one final question. and this will be directed to you first, Susan. It's a short one. What is your view of the concept of the bridge housing proposal for Marinwood Village? And are there any changes you would propose for that project?
Okay, well, that's a great question because that seems to be sort of the central area of interest in the community that I live in. I live 1 block away from where this proposed development is coming. And there was an excellent editorial today by John Hammond in the IJ. I would encourage all of you to take a look at that because he was one of the original members of this 8-year process that we've had to create the guiding principles. Andy Hyman represented the school district. We had homeowners from the different organizations, and we had very lively conversations about some of the guiding principles that we wanted to see. 2 market rate developers weren't able to make it pencil out. And so after the recession, things got quiet and some newer families moved in. And then the owner of the property went into contract with Bridge, which is a nonprofit housing developer. Their focus is for families in the workforce, families that are earning $65,000 a year or less. And they have 8 other projects in Marin County. They've offered anybody who wants to come see their programs to go look. There are a number of really important issues that will need to be addressed in the environmental review process. There's a toxic plume from a dry cleaner, it's right near a freeway, there's traffic issues, the visual aesthetics, the impacts on school. While not typically a part of a CEQA review process, I've asked for our county administrator and our financial officer in the schools to start grappling with that. With Prop 30 coming online, it might be that over the next 3 years, the Dixie School District will move from basic aid school to a revenue limit school and be paid based on number of kids that attend and that are in the seats. And we're going to watch how that progresses. But those answers will be, those answers will come during this process. And I'm going to reserve my decision about it until I see all of the information before me.
Thank you. Damon, 2 minutes.
So first of all, I want to point out that I was involved in the process, both because I actually lived across from Marinwood Plaza in a community called Casa Marinwood for a number of years. I also live nearby still, actually probably about a half mile. And I was also president of the Dixie School Board during the time period that the community came together and came up with a community vision for Marinwood Plaza. The concern now is that the recent proposal actually significantly departs from that community vision, and it's tough to see how we got from point A to B. Again, let me emphasize, something needs to be done at that site. The community agrees with that. They just feel on a basis on virtually walking all of that area now in this campaign that they don't understand how we got to this position. School financing is a big issue because of the tax exempt status. Let's hope Dixie does not fall out of basic aid. That's a stable source of financing. We should not hope for that simply as a way of potentially dealing with that issue. I'm not convinced it will in any event. The other big concerns, as I mentioned earlier, are that the community is really looking and needs a gathering place with an emphasis on retail, which was called for in the original community vision along with some housing. The community is concerned about the environmental issues at the site, namely the toxic plume, as well as the proximity to the freeway. And finally, the community is concerned about the scale of this project. Supervisor Adams says proposals fell through in the past. I'm not convinced that we shouldn't look at alternatives. The EIR calls will call for that.
Susan, your rebuttal?
Well, I don't recall seeing you at the meetings, Damon, so you weren't an active participant, and I don't hear any offer from you or other members of the community in opposition to even considering this for a viable option. We look for viable options. There's going to be 20,000 square feet of retail in this proposal. There will be less than the 100-unit cap that the community said. They didn't want more than 100 units. There will be a community gathering space. And if you read John Hammond's editorial today, it will outline all of that.
Thank you, Damon.
I did read Mr. Hammond's editorial. There was much to disagree with. And I also note that the IJ had a lead editorial a few days ago, which I think highlighted a lot of the issues that I'm talking about. Again, it's the process. The community did not feel that there was adequate consideration of their input. Let's do it at the front end, rather than why wait even till an EIR. Let's make the process better. Let's listen better.
Okay. Thank you both. Each of you will have an opportunity now to make a closing statement of 2 minutes, and I will begin with Damon.
Well, thank you, everyone. Thank you again to Marin Democrats, our panel, and timekeepers, and Mr. Rubin. Thank you, Susan. Marin is a unique, phenomenal place to live. We all know that. But there is a sense that we can do better. I want to bring my energy and desire to improve our communities to the Civic Center. And I have a track record in Santa Fe, which I believe demonstrates what I'll call pragmatic progressivism. Again, very proud of my democratic values and how that informs decision-making that I make. I put a lot of thought into coming up with a way of summarizing all the concepts I've been talking about in this campaign: responsiveness, listening, effective leadership. And I came up with a slogan that I'll try out on you guys, and I've got some door hangers out front as well where you can read it. It's keeping the promise of Marin. What I mean by that is decision-making based on local Marin values, informed by collaborative, community-based communication, resulting in effective, responsive local government for us here in Marin County. Ultimately, this election is not going to be about right versus left. It's going to be about moving forward. I'm establishing a big tent campaign. We have a lot of people involved. I'm proud of our local endorsements: Congressman Jared Huffman, North Bay Labor Council, Marin County prosecutors, San Rafael firefighters, San Rafael police, neighbors. We're getting out, we're walking precincts. I would love to have you involved.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Supervisor?
Well, campaign slogans are great, but you really want somebody that's going to actually deliver the goods. And in my term in office, in my time of serving, I think I've delivered the goods. I brokered a very difficult deal between the San Rafael Rock Quarry and that community that's led to 3 years of relative peace and a business operation being allowed to continue. I helped to create the health and wellness campus so that nobody has to go bankrupt because they become ill. And we did that with tobacco settlement money. We're creating bike paths and pedestrian paths. We are working in Santa Benicia to address the flood zone issues. The community that I'm listening to has been very happy with the work that I've done over the years, and I have a great deal of supporters. And I couldn't have accomplished what I've accomplished alone. I did it in coordination with the community that I represent. I'm very proud of being the swing vote that launched clean energy. I have a number of endorsers too. I have Senators Leno and Evans and former Congresswoman Lynn Woolsey. I have the support from labor, including County Fire and Deputy Sheriffs, the California Nurses Association, SEIU, IBEW, and organizations such as the American Nurses Association California and Planned Parenthood. And I recently got the endorsement of the San Rafael Chamber of Commerce. Go figure that. So with environmental leaders, business leaders, faith-based leaders, labor groups, I think I do have that big tent, and I have demonstrated that I can bring people together to solve the tough problems. Damon and I have been friends for a long time, and over the course of the years, we've shared very similar policies. But as the county supervisor, 40% of the budget is health and human services, and I bring that lens of a healthcare provider to the discussion. It's a very valuable and very important lens as we implement the Affordable Care Act. So I hope for your support. I ask for your support.